Welcome to our Angular JIRA plugin tutorial part 2. Today we will cover automating the Angular build process and styling our app with Atlassian AUI. Before we get started, I hope you don't mind a brief plug. I was recently laid off due to COVID-19 and seeking contract or full-time opportunities. My favorite frameworks are Ruby on Rails, Django, Spring Boot, Angular, and Vue. I also have strengths in GIS and mapping applications, especially for transportation. To contact me, please visit my LinkedIn profile or leave a comment below. The developer joke of the day is, the best thing about a Boolean is even if you are wrong, you are only off by a bit. The code developed in this tutorial is available for download from my GitHub account. In the first 4 minutes, we'll cover improvements to the build and development process. In the final 8 minutes, we'll style our application using Atlassian AUI. Let's get started. Now that we have our Angular demo working within JIRA, we can improve our development process. First, to speed up reloading of the page, we can enable resource batching by hitting the B key within JIRA. However, we cannot yet automatically update our client code within JIRA. This is because Angular build does not run during our Atlas package Maven build. Therefore, we will need to invoke ng-build manually in the terminal to rebuild our client code. We can add the frontend-maven-plugin, linked in the description, to our pom.xml. This plugin runs our Angular build during Atlas package and will also install Node and Yarn for us on new development machines. We can add the frontend Maven plugin code under our build plugins key in the pom.xml file. I will paste in some configuration here which sets the plugin's working directory to the client and establishes build executions for installation of Node and Yarn and the Yarn build process, which simply runs ng-build as configured in the package.json file and executes during the generate resources Maven build phase. Now when we run Atlas package, we see that Node and Yarn are already installed and our Angular client resources are generated. But we will need to run ng-build --watch to avoid having to build manually on each code change. Unfortunately, this does not work, because a bug in the latest versions of Angular causes ng-build --watch to generate file names without the differential loading suffixes that are generated by the plain ng-build command. This confuses Atlassian QuickReload because QuickReload ignores live changes to the XML resources manifest and expects the file names that were present in the XML manifest when the plugin was last rebuilt. This Angular bug was reported almost a year ago and is still present in Angular CLI version 9.1.1. Users have suggested several complex alternatives, but to simplify things here, I'm going to simply disable Angular's differential loading feature by changing the build target from ES2015 to ES5 within the tsconfig.json file. To get this working, I will need to run Atlas package, and if that doesn't work, restart Tomcat with Ctrl+C and Atlas debug. I'll also need to restart my ng-build --watch command. I now see that the generated file names are consistent using both build processes, and therefore Atlassian QuickReload picks up the changed files. I can now update my Angular client code on the fly without having to run Atlas package each time I change the code. Hooray! To further improve our development process, we can use the Angular CLI simultaneously with JIRA, as the Angular CLI Webpack server reloads even faster than JIRA. I'll simply run ng-s or ng-serve within my client folder. Visiting localhost port 4200 reveals my client app, but lacking the JIRA page design. Now it's time to tweak the look and feel of our app to use Atlassian's AUI styles. First, I'll need to remove the demo styles in the global styles.css file provided in the Angular demo. To get started, I'm going to add the @Atlassian/AUI node package to my dev dependencies using Yarn here. Although Atlassian's AUI framework is already provided within the JIRA framework, The node package also provides Atlassian's styles and JavaScript for use in the Angular CLI. Further, the @Atlassian/AUI package provides less sources, so I'm going to change from using plain CSS to less, which will help me reference AUI colors, etc. down the road. I'll rename the styles.css file to styles.less and replace all occurrences of this file name with an angular.json accordingly. Both ngserve and ngbuild --watch require a restart after this change. Back in my styles.less file, I'll import @Atlassian/AUI/dist/AUI-prototyping.css. There are a couple of less files providing color variables that I can import, but I'll cover that in a future tutorial. Reloading my Angular CLI browser, I can see that Atlassian's fonts are now used. We can visit docs.atlassian.com/AUI and scroll down to the latest user guide for some HTML and JavaScript examples. First, I'll change my hero buttons to use Atlassian lozenges. I'm going to copy the appropriate classes from the lozenges page of the AUI docs. Then I'll open my dashboard components HTML template and replace the hero's div CSS classes with the AUI classes. Reloading the page, the styles are applied. I'll remove the h4 tag, as well as the call-1-4 grid class from the A tag. But my lozenges are not quite perfect, so I'll edit my component's scoped style sheet. First I'll rename it to use less, which I'll also have to update in my dashboard.component.ts file. Then I'll remove the default styling that came with the Angular demo, add a hero class to my div, and add some padding and a small margin. Now when I reload my page in the Angular CLI, my hero lozenges look great. Switching over to my JIRA tab, they are also much more consistent with Atlassian styles. Next, we can use an AUI sidebar to organize our app's navigation. So I'll visit the pertinent documentation. A somewhat comprehensive HTML template is provided, which we can simply copy. We could create a separate sidebar Angular component, but for this tutorial, since we're not focused solely on Angular, I'll just paste the code into my app components template. I'll have to do a little bit of refactoring here, but it's pretty straightforward HTML. And here we have our AUI sidebar. While the Angular router links work, the AUI expand collapse functions do not. This is because AUI components are initialized with AJS, or Atlassian JavaScript, and some of the components require manual initialization. Recall that in our main.ts file, we wrapped our Angular bootstrap call into the AJS.toInit function. Thus, our DOM is rendered too late for AJS to pick up the components. But the sidebar doesn't work in the Angular CLI either. We must first initialize it in both JIRA and in the CLI. First, we will declare AJS in our app component, so the TypeScript compiler doesn't complain when we try to use this variable, which is globally defined by the Atlassian framework. In our ng-on-init handler, we call AJS.sidebar with our .aui-sidebar class selector. Going back to our JIRA page, that call should have worked, but it doesn't. We notice in our debug console that AJS.sidebar is not defined. This is because, with all the tons of JavaScript included by default, for some reason Atlassian decided to make the sidebar JavaScript optional. Therefore, we can require the resources in our index.vm velocity template within the src main resources folder. We're already requiring our custom context resources here, so I'll just copy this code and change the context to com.atlassian.auiplugin AUI-Sidebar. Reloading the page, the sidebar now works. Yay! We can see here that the object is defined and the sidebar even expands or collapses dynamically based on the width of the browser. However, our sidebar is not yet working in the Angular CLI. While the JIRA framework includes our JavaScript resources for us, we will have to include them manually in our CLI build. To do this, I will create a separate build configuration in my angular.json file called CLI, because I only need to load these resources when building for the CLI, not when building it for JIRA. I'll include both jQuery and the Atlassian AUI JavaScript files here, and I'll add jQuery to the development dependencies. Further, there's no need to load duplicate AUI CSS styles in production, so I will separate this import in my CLI build configuration using this file replacements mechanism. I'll then duplicate my styles.less file to styles.cli.less and remove the AUI import from the styles.less file, which is loaded during the Atlassian build. Finally, I'll open my angular.json file, search for serve, and specify the CLI build configuration I just created in the browser target setting. Now, after restarting the Angular CLI with ng-serve, our AUI sidebar is finally working. Mission accomplished! Hopefully this is enough to help you get started integrating Atlassian AUI into your Angular frontend. In my next tutorial, we will take our demo app to the next level. Currently, the data included in the Angular Tour of Heroes demo is static, but next we will build a REST API backend in our JIRA plugin using JAX-RS annotations and JAXN so that we can persist our heroes within Atlassian's ActiveObjects entities. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, share, leave feedback, stay tuned, and stay well.